Okay, we are officially recording. Awesome. So present mode, sorry. Okay. There we go. Hi, everybody. My name is Cheryl Crow, and I have rheumatoid arthritis. And I'm going to be giving you a condensed version of a talk that I gave to a Live Yes Connect adult group about managing stress strategies and coping tools for managing stress and anxiety while you are either parenting or grandparenting with arthritis. That's a mouthful. So let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to explain who I am and then give you the 3 tools I use the most. So I have had rheumatoid arthritis for 17 years, since right before my 21st birthday. And I have also been an occupational therapist for 7 years. So Barb, who you just heard from, is also an occupational therapist. I also have a 6-year-old son and a puppy. And I love creating videos, especially videos about life hacks for arthritis. And I love being a patient educator, just as a volunteer and also in my work. So let's talk a little bit about anxiety first. So it's good to know that anxiety is a normal response to fear, that we need some level of anxiety in our lives so that we can take action when we are threatened for our survival. So 66% of people, according to the Arthritis Foundation Live Yes Insight survey, said that they feel anxiety or fear in the last 7 days. And again, even though some degree of anxiety is normal, we don't want to have so much anxiety that it interferes with our ability to function or perform meaningful roles in our lives, like being a parent or grandparent. So just know that if you're feeling anxious or depressed because of your arthritis, you are not alone. I'm just going to pause this for a second. Charlie, you need to go upstairs if you're going to make noise. Why don't you go upstairs to your room? Okay. Stop share. Okay, sorry, hopefully you can edit that out. And a lot of people with arthritis feel depressed or anxious because of their condition. So there are many different causes of stress and anxiety with arthritis, whether or not you're a parent. So things like the unknown, worrying about social effects like friendships and work, financial stress, overwhelm in general, with just there's a huge learning curve when you get diagnosed with arthritis of learning all the different specialists and appointments and medications. And there's also, of course, dealing with the physical symptoms, fatigue and pain, that can cause mental stress as well. And then there's additional stressors that can come with parenting and grandparenting, things like the physical demands of childcare, which is pretty big. It's not like a laid back job, right? And then if you have a hard time performing the physical tasks of parenthood and grandparenthood, that can then cause emotional stress because you could feel frustrated or sad due to not being able to perform that role at the level that you would hope to. You also might have worry or anxiety, as I have, about passing along your condition to your child, and then just, again, overwhelm with adjusting to the role of being a parent or grandparent, and then not having access to your former like self-care routines, like for me, which was a lot of resting and naps, which even though babies and infants and toddlers sleep a lot, they don't always want to sleep on your schedule, right? So again, I really want to stress that like a lot of times we talk about physical symptoms and psychological separately, but it's all intertwined, right? Like we hear things from our children like, mommy, when your neck feels better, you can pick me up again, which is, understandably pretty heartbreaking. You also can feel pretty considerable fatigue while parenting and grandparenting, is particularly with the autoimmune or autoinflammatory forms of arthritis, like rheumatoid and ankylosing spondylitis. And the fatigue is uncomfortable in and of itself, but it can also lead you to saying no to things, which again can then lead to a cycle of guilt. Another really considerable stressor is the uncertainty. So we have to kind of talk about why people are stressed before we jump to tools. I know you're probably like, I just want to just give me the coping tools. But uncertainty is a huge trigger. You don't know when you wake up in the morning sometimes, is it going to be a good day? Is it going to be a bad day? How do you plan? And so another thing that I want to mention briefly is invisible illness. So the nature of these diseases are such that they are often invisible to the outside perspective, so people don't understand everything you're dealing with. So what can we do? The three main things I'm going to talk about other than therapy are mindfulness, acceptance and commitment therapy, and CBT, which is cognitive behavior therapy. So I always put a big plug for professional therapy. So if I could do anything different in all of my arthritis care, I would have gotten professional therapy earlier. I think a lot of us tend to get really like a tough mindset, like we're used to dealing with so much that sometimes we think, oh, I'll just deal with it on my own. But professional therapy has been so huge. It's like the best thing I've ever done. So you might be confused or overwhelmed. This is just a little list to help you. I'll let you guys maybe pause it and take a look at it or copy it down if you'd like. There are lots of different kinds of professionals that can help you, and they can do a little bit different things, but they can all provide therapy. Okay, so mindfulness. Mindfulness simply means keeping your attention in the present moment without judgment. So a lot of times there's a little bit of a misnomer in the way that mindfulness has been sold to like Western or American audiences as like mindfulness means being really peaceful or escaping what's going on in your life. Actually, if you take it as a literal and philosophical root, it's actually about simply being in the present, whether you're happy, whether you're sad, whether you're in pain. It's just sitting with whatever is actually happening in your life without trying to change it or judge it. So anxiety tends to make us think a lot about the future. And I've noticed this with other patients too. We kind of like, oh my gosh, how am I going to plan? How am I going to do this? And, with parenting itself is also the same. It's like, oh my gosh, my baby's sitting up. What's going to happen when they start walking? What's going to happen when they start running? What's going to happen when they start feeding themselves? How am I going to cope with all this? And mindfulness just allows you to sit in the present moment and just connect to the world as it actually is. So if you Google, mindfulness apps, mindfulness exercises, you'll get hundreds of thousands, if not probably millions of results. But these are just three that I really like. Another benefit of mindfulness is that if you're able to, get into that present state, it actually helps your body go into the rest and digest mode, which is like the opposite of fight or flight. So stress and anxiety system makes your nervous system like want to get ready to fight, and it makes you physiologically stressed and reduces things like cortisol, which actually aren't good for your immune system. Whereas the rest and digest mode is actually better for your immune system. So if you have, again, one of these autoimmune forms of arthritis, it's a win for you in that respect as well. So number two, I'm going to take a little tiny bit longer on this one because it's the one that can be the least intuitive, but for me, it has been absolutely the most transformative. It's called acceptance and commitment therapy, and it actually is a mindfulness plus behavior-based approach. So in a way, it's a little bit of what we just talked about with mindfulness, and then with cognitive behavior therapy, which we're going to talk about next. So a quick way to remember it is that A means accept your thoughts and feelings, again, with the mindfulness exactly how they are. C is connect with your values, so what's important in your life. And T is taking effective action. So what can you do despite whatever is physically going on, despite whatever your thoughts and feelings are? So you ask, what can you do that's truly meaningful or important in your life, which is not about feeling necessarily better. And so it frees you from this kind of endless struggle to try to constantly maximize your health and feel better. I have to feel better. I have to wait to be a good parent until I feel better. You actually can open yourself to possibilities in your life exactly as it is right now. It's really, really cool. And I will take a quick moment to say, a lot of people confuse the term acceptance with like resignation, or it means like throwing your hands up and saying things will never get better. Oh, well, I have to just accept my fate. It's not about accepting anything long-term. It's literally what is precisely happening right now. You can still absolutely have hope for the future. You can want to keep finding a better medical plan or pursue anything that you want to for managing your care and have hope that it might get better. But you learn how to connect to the present moment and say, what's possible now? Given that I'm feeling what I'm feeling physically and mentally, what can I do now? Sorry, I just dropped my phone, just gesticulating wildly. So one of the best I have permission from Louise Gardner to share this. One of the best illustrations is, so instead of saying you shouldn't feel anxious or feeling bad about feeling anxious or like putting pressure on yourself to make your anxiety go away, you just acknowledge it. You say, yep, that's anxiety. I don't, I don't want it, I don't like it, but I'm able to just stop struggling with it. So the way Russ Harris talks about it, who, if you do nothing else from this talk, I would really recommend the Happiness Trap book that he wrote. It is all about acceptance and commitment therapy, written in a very, very digestible, easy way to understand. The struggle switch is when you start struggling with your emotions and your thoughts and thinking, I shouldn't feel that way. And I think a lot of us, particularly as parents and grandparents, we kind of get hard on ourselves, right? You're like, oh, I shouldn't have lost my cool. I shouldn't have snapped at my kid. I shouldn't have yelled at them, or I should have been more patient. And, you know, this acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT, just allows you to say, you know, this is what happened. I'm not going to struggle with it. And then you are able to move on. What's important in my life? What can I do now? You know, you take action based on what's actually possible, not what happened in the past, or not what might happen in the far future. So as a mom with RA, you know, I really got in this waiting mode. Like I had a really horrible flare up postpartum. I was in a lot of pain, a lot of confusion, not sure what we should do. Should we switch meds? And it was really, really hard. And, you know, through going through therapy, starting when Charlie was about 12 months old, I really realized that, like, I was waiting until I felt better to engage in parenting. But what if this is my only chance? Like, what if, you know, I'm missing out on his babyhood and childhood because I'm so focused on feeling better myself and thinking this illusion that if I just felt better, I could be a better parent, where, you know, what could I gain is from accepting the world exactly as it is right now, instead of trying to tweak it. And that's been a really, really important question in my life that's carried through until today. So it actually took me a really, really long time to understand acceptance and commitment therapy. And so if it's not intuitive to you, if you're like, I want to feel better, what are you talking about? Don't just take it if it helps. If it doesn't help, don't worry about it. Actually, even in ACT, they say, you know, it's all about a concept of workability, which means if it works in your life, then it's okay. So, you know, if it's helpful and moving you towards what you value, then, you know, then go with it. So if it doesn't work, just don't worry about it. Okay, cognitive behavior therapy. This is something that a lot of people who've been exposed to if you've gone through any therapy. So it's a little tiny bit older than ACT, even though ACT is mindfulness based. ACT as like a formal method is a little newer. So CBT is all about understanding that your thoughts and your feelings and your behaviors all influence each other, so we can kind of alter things at any point along the way. So you also, the way I like to think about CBT is like learning how to be a detective about your thoughts and just figure out, are your thoughts distorted or are they accurate? And if they're distorted, you could learn how to reframe them. And so I think CBT is really useful for things that are truly like thought distortions that you can actually consciously change. The downside is that the reason I like ACT better is that sometimes they aren't distortions. Sometimes we are going through truly painful things, and we don't have to like force ourselves to think that those are distorted thoughts. They're actually just realities, and we can learn to sit with them. But anyway, so with ACT, we learn how to catch ants, automatic negative thoughts. And it's really kind of fascinating. Once you start noticing it in yourself, you might realize, oh my gosh, I have so many little negative thoughts I think to myself on a daily basis. And so CBT teaches you to catch, quote unquote, catch those and figure out a way to reframe them. So an example would be like, oh, I always forget to, you know, I don't know, check my son for diaper rash. I mean, that's something that you want to definitely pay attention to. But, and then you say, actually, is it always? Is it really, truly always? Like, that's when the detective comes in and you learn to be objective. Like, even though it had happened twice in the last year, that's not always. That means you've had like 900 diaper changes where you did the right thing, right? So you really learn how to like counterbalance those. And I like to think of CBT as like helping you develop the inner coach versus the inner critic. So the inner coach is like, you're great, this is good. And then the inner critic is like, you suck, you do everything badly all the time. And so CBT helps you figure out like, what's the reality? And like, are you listening to one more than the other? Of course, people tend to be listening to the negative one more than the positive. So you learn how to kind of filter out that distortion. So a bonus strategy would be humor. So I'm really big into like humorous ways to connect to patients. And actually I just created a TikTok account kind of on a whim, and I've gotten such a big response from that. Again, TikTok is kind of a humorous social media platform. They used to be more for like dancing, but now it's also other things. So I also have a blog post about this. And, you know, I'm sorry, this is a reminder that's old. That, you know, we used to like, or I used to think everything had to be so serious. And but when I read this book, Man's Search for Meaning, my other little book recommendation, you know, Viktor Frankl is a psychologist or psychotherapist who had been through the Holocaust as a patient. And he actually talked about the importance of humor, even in that most like dire of circumstances. And he said it helped afford an aloofness and an ability to rise above any situation. And I thought that was really, really powerful. And there's actually a lot of research that supports humor for chronic pain in older adults. And I think when you work with children, you know, or you're working, quote unquote, with them as a parent or a grandparent, you know, children love to connect through humor, and that can kind of help bring you back to the present moment. When you're laughing, it's usually like a very like present experience. So just to wrap up and to reiterate what I was talking about, a review, there we go, you know, professional therapy, there's no shame. You know, it should be just as important as going to the rheumatologist or general practitioner. If you have any degree of stress or anxiety, you don't have to wait. I kept waiting until it got worse and like, okay, now it's finally bad enough to go to therapy. I kept thinking, oh, if it gets worse, I'll go to therapy. Well, why not help yourself now? It's actually better to learn the strategies when you're not in a total crisis mode. When you're in crisis, it's like it's just harder. You have a bigger hurdle to jump over. Mindfulness teaches you to be present. ACT teaches you to accept uncertainty. I don't even think I talked too much about uncertainty, but I will briefly say, like, so the part about acceptance and being present with the thoughts is, I think uncertainty is a good example of like a thought that we often struggle with. Like I've talked to my therapist about, well, I don't know how to plan. I don't know, for example, we were going to try to have another baby. And then we had a lot of uncertainty about whether we should or shouldn't do that for my body and my health, as well as just our overall family balance. And, you know, my therapist kept being like, can you just sit with that uncertainty? Like, is that a problem you have to solve? You know, at a certain point, if you're like getting older, you kind of have to like make a decision at some point, but there's a lot of uncertainties in chronic illness and in parenting that if we can learn how to tolerate them and be able to say like, uncertainty is just part of life. There are a lot of situations where there's just not a black and white answer. Like no one has a crystal ball. And if you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off, like trying to solve the problem of uncertainty, you're going to be spending a lot of energy on a problem that has no solution. So I've really benefited from really working a lot on uncertainty in therapy. And the last one is cognitive behavior therapy, and like, again, learning how to catch, and CBT is a lot more than this, but this is just the exercise I like, is the catching those ants or the automatic negative thoughts and learning how to be a detective about them. So if you'd like to get in touch with me, you can email info@myarthritislife.com. I do lots of free videos and education sessions. You can check out my website. I have a lot of infographics and stuff on my social media as well, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. And I will be sending a hyperlinkable handout to all of these other resources for managing stress and anxiety while having a chronic illness. So also, I can't say highly enough about the website and the Facebook group, Mama's Facing Forward, which has tons of resources for parents and for pregnancy and family planning and postpartum and parenting younger kids and older kids. And I have some additional little life hack videos with talking about topics similar to what Barb talked about. So thank you so much for your time, and I hope to follow up with you soon. Bye.